So you're stuck, your art isn't improving, you've done everything you think you can do, you're drawing all the time, but you just don't see that type of improvement that you're looking for. So let's talk about how to learn efficiently and how to actually improve art by being really intentional with what you draw and how you focus on creating art. So if you don't know me, my name's Jackie. I'm a professional character designer. I've worked on films for Netflix and shows from DreamWorks, Warner Brothers, Nickelodeon. And today I wanted to talk about how to really focus on how to improve on getting better at art, because that's something that I really struggled with when I was in art college. And I feel like what I learned could be helpful to you. So let's talk about 7 major tips that I have for you that'll help drastically improve your art by really focusing on being really intentional with what you're going to learn and what you're going to start practicing more. I also have an exclusive 8th bonus tip for my Patreon, so you can get that extra tip by joining my Patreon. Let's get into it. So you might have heard of the art improvement cycle. That's when your artistic skill is more advanced than your observational skill. So what does that mean exactly? It's when your observational skill, your eye, your vision, how you see art, is improving at a faster rate than your drawing skill, so faster than your hand. So when you say, oh, I'm in an art block, or oh, my art sucks right now, why can't I draw anything good right now? It's because your eye is advancing faster than your hand. But when your hand is at a higher skill than your eye, then you're like, oh, I'm on top of the world. This is the best drawing I've ever made in my entire life. So while both your skills are improving, they're improving at different rates. And understanding that is really key and essential onto how to stop criticizing your art all the time, how to not think that you're getting worse at art, because you're always improving. It's just that your hand hasn't caught up to what your brain now knows. So you want to get to a point where you can really self-evaluate your own artwork and be able to critique yourself and be able to learn from what you've drawn and bring that into your next piece. So let's talk about the 7 tips I have for you. Number 1, expand your visual library. So my best piece of advice, and honestly, basically the only reason I wanted to make this video is because I wanted to share this with you. And this is what I learned in art college, and this actually really fundamentally changed how I perceive art and how I understand studying art. So our brains are wired to remember shapes and patterns, lines, things like that, as humans. So how can you take something that you want to learn and put it in your long-term memory, put it in your visual library? So what I like to do is I like to study, analyze, and trace drawings that have that quality that I'm looking for. For example, I was really bad at drawing hands. I was struggling with drawing hands, how to simplify it. I could draw for my own hand, but I wasn't sure how to create those angles that I see other people making. So what I did is I took drawings from Motor City, because they have beautiful hand drawings, and I start analyzing, I start tracing it, I start understanding what makes these hands better than my hands that I draw. I'm looking at the straights versus curves, I'm noticing how the thumb flesh is being treated, how the fingers are being treated, how they're being grouped together. And by doing these studies, by tracing, by copying and analyzing, I'm really committing that to my long-term memory, and I'm adding it to my visual library. So in the future, when I want to draw hands, I'll remember that straight versus curve that I learned when I was drawing the Motor City hands and how I can apply it to my own current drawings. Then I can really experiment and play around with how far I can push these hands outside of the style that I learned. And you can do this for anything. You could do this for hands, you could do this for faces, you could do it in any area that you think you need improvement in. That's my main tip, and that's kind of what all of my other tips are gonna kind of be trickling down from. My second tip, which should be the first tip, is learn the fundamentals. So if you don't know the fundamentals yet, and you want to improve at art without knowing the basics, then I got some bad news for you. You're gonna have to learn the fundamentals. But before going into specifics, you need to learn basics of art. That means color theory, perspective, value, and volume. And once you kind of know that, then you can go into a little more specific. If you like character design and you want to learn how to draw characters a little bit better, you need to learn anatomy, proportions, how to rotate volumes. If you want to learn more environments and backgrounds, you have to learn perspective, color theory, value, lighting, and composition. So once you really have a grasp at these fundamentals, you might also see a block at, well, you know the fundamentals, but now how do I get better now? So let's move on to the next topic, which is studies. Studies are going to be your main building blocks on how to really get better at art. Especially when you're in an art block, I like to do studies because it's not something you have to be creative with. It's something that you just get better at your existing skills. So in terms of studies, you need to identify what you want to learn more of and focus in on that. So similar to what I said before about tracing hands, what you're gonna wanna do here is you're gonna take your favorite artists, you're gonna grab a bunch of your favorite artists, and you're gonna analyze what you like best about these artists. What do you admire about them, and how can you put that into your own work? And I'm not saying choose one artist and copy their style, because that's not gonna help you improve as an artist at all. You want to take what you like from all these artists and you want to create it as your own. You want to trace, study, and analyze. When I say trace, chill out. You're not going to be posting it. You're not going to be claiming it as your own. You're doing a personal study that you don't share with people. It's really something that you do for yourself to learn more. It's educational. You can see how the artists that you admire use these fundamentals and how they visually describe it. For example, when I look at Jason McLean's artwork, I'm really looking at how he's using shapes, how he's using line. Why do they look so flat, yet still so volumetric? These poses are really energetic. Why is that? I'm going to trace the line of action. I'm going to analyze the shapes a little bit further. I'm going to see how he uses fundamentals like perspective and volume and how he creates it so flat and energetic and sketchy. I'm going to do that for maybe 3 to 5 artists to really understand what I want to develop as an artist myself. So let's talk about creating specific studies for the specific thing you want to improve. If you want to draw more characters and you want to study anatomy and proportions a little bit stronger and don't know where to start with figure drawing, and you could find a lot of these online. I'll link below some free online sources for figure drawing. Start with 30-second gestures, really focusing on the line of action where the limbs go, and then do some 1-minute poses, some 2-minute poses, all the way up to 5-minute poses. For figure drawing, I suggest when you start out, just focus on trying to understand those gestures and anatomy, quickly drawing some shorthands, and that'll really improve your posing. In terms of anatomy, I suggest studying the human body in longer poses. And maybe that means starting by tracing a long-term pose, understanding where the muscles go, how the arms connect to the torso, things like that. And then you can put that drawing to the side and start using it as reference and drawing it yourself. And then after that, you hide all of that and you try to draw it yourself without reference. And that's a 1, 2, 3 step on how to kind of get a little better idea of anatomy. If you're struggling with character design stylization, I suggest going cafe sketching as well. It's kind of like figure drawing, but it's more still, it's at your own time. You could start by drawing what you see in the cafe, the people that you see, the way they are, and then you could take that very same drawing and you can stylize it and see how you could push the shapes and how you can make it look a little bit more like your own drawings. And with this, I suggest doing a lot of quick studies, thumbnails, loose sketches. That's really how you improve your design skills. If you're struggling with rendering, and rendering is lighting and shading and making things look a little more realistic, I suggest taking an artist that you really like and seeing how they render it and trying to copy that technique. Put their paintings in values, black and white, and see how that works. If you're struggling with color, I suggest doing film studies where you don't color pick, but you have a frame from a film. You could trace the design because that's not what we're studying here. We're studying the color. You could start color blocking what the colors look like. You're focusing on lighting, you're focusing on value, trying to get colors as similar as possible. Start with a value painting, thumbnail, and then try with colors. If you're struggling with environments, I suggest learning perspective a little bit. And once you kind of get a good hand of perspective, start doing some plein airs. And a great way to do that is to pull up a random spot on Google Maps, start with some small compositions, start with some really loose value sketches, and then spend maybe half an hour doing this study. And that's the thing, it's better to do, you know, a 30-minute study every day where you can actually keep up with it rather than doing a 2-hour study once a week where it's hard to find the time. So work on some studies, because that'll be the main thing that I think will really improve your art. Okay, tip number 4, reference. Every professional uses reference. There's not just like things that we know how everything exists. Like, I don't know how anything exists. I don't know how to draw a car. I gotta look up a car drawing before I draw a car. I don't know how to draw a bike. Even with faces at difficult angles or poses, how to draw props that the character is holding. You always have to look up reference. So before you start drawing character, I suggest gathering 2 types of references. Grab a pose reference and a style reference. And for a pose reference, you're gonna wanna find a pose that really captures the energy, that shows the hands clearly, the face angles clearly, the drapery of the clothing. In terms of style reference, I suggest finding a couple artists that really encompasses what you want your final piece to look like. And I say this so you don't just wander aimlessly without an idea of what you want your final to look like. Do you want your piece to be really rendered at the end with some strong lighting? Or do you want your piece to be more flat and angular? Find a piece that really has the level of detail, complexity, sketchiness that you're looking for, and you can reference back to that when you're not sure what direction you want your piece to take. But I want to emphasize, don't copy the final look of a different artist. I want you to use it more as inspiration and the level of doneness that you're looking for. Number 5, consistency. You won't be an amazing artist overnight. This is a skill that takes years to develop. I've been drawing for over a decade really consistently, and I'm still nowhere near to the place that I want to be at. I really suggest having a sketchbook that you have a space to really draw a lot of loose drawings. Like I said, it's important to make a bunch of loose, fast drawings than one really long, slow, better, quote-unquote drawing. Because by making really loose drawings, you can really focus on structure, anatomy, proportion, scale, volume. And then once you kind of have a good grasp on that, then you could move on to rendering, painting, lighting, things like that. So if you're more of a structured person that you need me to tell you what exactly to do, here's a little habit forming drawing time that you can do that will help improve your art. And your intention is to focus on drawing something that you want to improve. So step 1, take 2 hours a day to improve on a subject. Step 2, rotate your goal every few days, maybe every week, in order to keep it fresh and exciting. Create a drawing, but push yourself outside of your comfort zone a little bit. If you usually draw a character and their hands are behind them because it's too hard to draw hands, take those hands out and draw those hands. And take the time to really properly sketch out these new ideas. Start with a really loose sketch, a really basic block-in. You don't want to focus on details. You want to focus on overall structure and anatomy. And then once you go through maybe 2, even to 3 sketches, then you can start actually lining that. When I do this and I have a tough hand that I need to draw, for example, sometimes I draw it 3 to 4 times even before I even decide to do a line. Okay, tip number 7, self-critique. So now that we talked about improving art, how do we really apply that? So like I said before, it's better to make a bunch of loose, crappy sketches than to focus on one really good drawing. So whenever I'm done with a drawing and I don't really like it that much, sometimes I'll critique it. And I'll do it in the same way that I'll critique other people's artwork. I'll lower the transparency, add a new layer, and I'll just draw red lines on top. Because when you have your artwork from a different perspective, when you think it's someone else's, it's a lot easier to critique it and evaluate it and not be so personally attached to it. So when you're sketching out a piece and it's not working really quite how you want to, duplicate it, move it off to the side, and start going over your drawing. You see that something's wrong, and you're improving it, and then you can compare it one to the other, and you see and you can analyze what needs to be improved. Another tip, flip your canvas. By having a second perspective, oftentimes it's a lot more clear what is wrong with the piece. Also, try not beating yourself up over it. Anatomy is hard, drawing is hard. Sometimes I'm drawing this one piece for a very long time, I'm erasing it, I'm going it over and over again, something's not working, I don't know what. And honestly, I just scrap it and I try something new. There's nothing wrong with creating a new piece that will work better for you. It's not giving up because you've given it your best shot, you've done it a few times, you've gotten frustrated and you learned from it. You practiced it and you tried it, and that's what's important. And so with everything that we learned thus far, hopefully you'll be able to start analyzing your own drawings, seeing what's wrong with it, and being able to critique it so next time your drawing is much better. And my final tip, rest. And there's 2 types of rests right here. Rest number 1. If you're working on a piece and you've worked on it forever and you're frustrated and it sucks, honestly, step away from it. You have limited creative energy. Go on a walk, do something else for the rest of the day, and the next day you'll be much more revitalized and you'll see it from a whole new lens. But sometimes to avoid this, I like to really warm up before I start a really big piece. It'll help you ease into a creative space. It'll help your hand kind of get used to what you're drawing. Okay, my second type of rest is to rest, period. It's really easy to get into the grind mindset and constantly be working and constantly wanting to improve. But this leads to burnout and injury. And trust me, I've been dealing with constant injury in my arms because I've been drawing too much. I've had to take months off of work, which really sucks. You know, when you put all your energy into art, it becomes a lot more personal than you creating art. So there may be a time where you can't draw and you become injured like I did, and then your self-value plummets because who am I if I'm not an artist? So instead of attaching your personal self-worth to your art, attach your personal self-worth to who you are. Like, you're a human, you're a person before you're an artist. You're an artist second. And that took me a long time to learn and understand. And I really wish someone put this into simple terms for me a long time ago. So remember, there's no end goal in becoming a better artist. It's a constant journey. You're always going to be improving your art. You're always going to be finding things that you want to get better at. No matter where you are in your art journey, it takes time, patience, and work. And if you want my bonus tip on comparing yourself to others, you can join my Patreon and find that there. So I wish you the best of luck in your art journey, and let me know if these tips helped. And my art book, Mismatched, is available on my website. This book has all the process and creative exploration in my film, Mismatched, that you could check out on YouTube. Thanks for watching. Let me know what else you'd like me to talk about, because I'm going to try this YouTube thing now, I guess. All right, bye.